There we are talking the Optomax 35mm f2.8 prime lens. As far as I can tell, this is a lens from the 80s, probably 19. You know what? I can't even judge by the serial number when this was produced, because if the serial number is anything to go by, this actually might have been produced in 1972, which, judging by the appearance of it, doesn't seem right to me. I found this lens at a camera fair. It was the first camera fair I'd ever attended. This particular lens I found at a stall that I believe belongs to Jonathan Harris, because I recognized him from his YouTube channel, Worldwide Camera Exchange. And if I'm mistaken on that, I sincerely apologize, but I'm pretty sure it was him. And I found this lens in the £5 section of random things that he had at his stall. This was £5. It looked like it was an M42 mount lens and extremely affordable, a 35mm focal length, which I've been quite interested in lately, so I figured why the hell not. Now, with the very little bits of information that I could find on this lens, I found some information on forums. The first of which I found was some dude saying that we should stay away from this lens, and I have absolutely no idea why someone would say anything like that, because as you can tell by some of the photos that you've been seeing on the screen right now, this lens is superb, especially considering the price. So from the limited information, it seems that this lens was manufactured in Japan, but one source of information says the UK, but this was an in-house store brand of camera equipment. So there was a store somewhere, apparently either in the UK or in Japan, and this was the lens brand that they had for their store. And that's as much as I have about that. And overall, with the exception of that one random person saying that this lens must be avoided and is bad, other forums have just said that it's got an average performance, but I think that is incorrect. This lens is, as I've just mentioned, this lens is great. As far as I can tell, there aren't any strong chromatic aberrations that come out of photos straight out of camera. I have found that with this lens in particular, a grand majority of the photos that I captured with this lens adapted to my Lumix mirrorless camera, I was able to use the photos straight out of camera without making too many edits, and especially the black and white conversions. Some of those black and white conversions which required no editing at all, I think are superb photos. For reference, right now we are shooting on that lens on my mirrorless camera, so this is the focal length that you get from it, 35mm, and this is the field of view that you'll obtain from it. I am sincerely hoping that I am in focus, and sincere apologies if I am not. This is it. This is going to be my one take go on this YouTube video. But now that I have the background history of this lens out of the way, the very limited background history, my background history with this lens, which involves I got it, I cleaned it, very lightly cleaned it, it didn't need much cleaning, and then before going to Berlin, which is what the majority of these photos are going to be, I went for a little walk. There's a park about 20 minutes away from me. I went for a walk just to capture some photos to make sure that I'm not making a mistake for just packing only this lens for my trip to Berlin. I'm going to Germany tomorrow, and I'm planning on just taking this lens on this camera. So just these two things, because just taking hand luggage, I'd like to fit just this into my bag along with some clothing. Before we do that though, let's go for a walk, take some photos, make sure that this lens is not complete trash. 35mm prime lens. I'm looking forward to this. Let's go. And as you might be able to guess, because it was a park, most of the photos in this test shoot session were of flowers. So if you're not a fan of flower photography, just skip a few minutes ahead. I'll put a timestamp in if I remember. Some flower video, some flower photo with some zooming ins so that you can get an idea for just how nicely this lens performs, how sharp your photos and your videos can be if you shoot them under the right conditions. And I'm trying to think of words to say it while you're watching this. Maybe I'll just put some music. But essentially, during this photo walk, this walk in this park, I decided that this lens was going to be more than appropriate for my time in Berlin, for photos, for videos, just for some relaxed tourism while visiting a family member. And because this video is up, it means that I did choose to take this lens with me to Germany. So, spoiler alert. But with regard to the test photos that I captured with this combo, with this setup, the ones that just blew me away was this one particular profile portrait that I captured of Julia. This is the profile portrait, just straight out of camera, no edits, the color version, and this is the black and white version, direct, just hitting V on Lightroom, direct conversion to black and white. That's what the photo looks like. Then here's a version of it with just some very minor color edits. And then my ultimate favorite was this one here, the square crop of this photo. My opinion might change. I might revert back to the original wide crop of the photo, the original crop 35 field of view 3x2. But as it stands currently, the square crop of this photo just blew me away, especially considering this lens was £5. It's not that difficult to misfocus, though. It's not unusual to misfocus or to nail focus with this camera and lens combo, even with the focus peaking. I found that I had to use the screen a lot because when looking through the electronic viewfinder, because it's a manual lens, so there's no communication with the camera. When looking at the photo through the electronic viewfinder, it's just too dark. You have to really open up the aperture to do that, but sometimes you want to shoot at f5.6 or f16 if you're shooting outside, if you're shooting a building on a bright sunny day. I would say that the main issue that I have with this lens is its minimal focus distance, which is nothing to complain about really. It's a £5 lens, minimal focus distance of about ½ meter if I'm not mistaken, so it's by no means a macro lens, but it's great for portraits, environmental portraits. It's great for scenes that are just slightly further away from you. It's a lovely focal length, but unfortunately, as you could see by the flower photos earlier on, it's not fantastic for things that you want to get close up to. So overall, with regard to portraits, I'd say this is not the best lens for portraits. Having said that, it's a fantastic lens for portraits, as you can see by some of the portraits, environmental portraits that I'm sharing throughout this video. There is beautiful color that comes from this lens straight out of camera, and beautiful contrast that you can get straight out of camera. Of course, you've got to make sure that you're shooting in the right conditions. Some of these black and white portraits of Julia, especially when you can see her hands, remind me of the TV show Ripley. It's a TV show based on Patricia Highsmith's character. If I'm not mistaken, it's John Ripley, and the con artist guy. If you've seen The Talented Mr. Ripley, it's the TV show, Netflix TV show based on that, but it's shot completely in black and white, and it's gorgeous throughout. If you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend you check it out. But some of the photos, the black and white photos that I got using this lens and this combo, reminded me of that. It was of course the quality of the light hitting the subject, but I think it also had a lot to do with the contrast features associated with this lens. I do believe that this lens will be fantastic for black and white photography on film cameras. Luckily, I do have one in Cape Town. I've got a Pentax Spotmatic F that takes an M42 mount lens, so I'm very much looking forward to testing that out. I think that this, combined with some Kentmere Pan 400 or even Kentmere Pan 100, will make for some superb photos under the correct lighting conditions. So I'd say that the quality in terms of color and contrast of this lens are quite similar to my Yashica 28mm f2.8, which I also got for an amazingly inexpensive price. Though I don't love the 28mm focal length, some of the contrast from the photos that I obtained from that particular lens were fantastic. I think this one tops that ever so slightly, but if we consider the fact that this is a 35mm focal length, which I, up to this point, much prefer overall, this lens is a clear winner for me. I am so grateful that I found it. I'm so happy that I took a little tiny, very inexpensive risk, but I have been actually opting out of or trying not to buy things that I find that are extremely cheap, because I'm gathering a lot of things and I want to be careful with that regard. But this is a reminder that maybe it's not so much of a bad idea, that if I find a £5 lens, I really should just go for it, because at the end of the day, even if the lens ends up being sort of a trash lens like the one that I made a review of a few months or maybe even a year ago, I can't even remember what it was, but I'll put that link below and I'll put it at the end of this video. There was a lot going wrong with that lens, but when you immerse yourself in the tool, in the product, and you make a plan and you understand what can go wrong with the tools in your hands, you can overcome those problems, you can overcome those factors and still create images and visuals that you want to portray. That's not always the case. There will always be situations where just the tools are not the right tools for what you want to achieve, but there is almost always a workaround. So don't feel that you're limited by bad products if you happen to have a hand-me-down lens from someone that gave you a lens and you think, oh no, this is not good enough, this is not top of the line, never be afraid to try new things, or don't be afraid to try out vintage lenses. They're a very inexpensive way of getting into a different realm of photography that is actually quite fun and can encourage you to learn a lot. I was really having trouble with some of the previous manual lenses that I had in video, where I just don't have the confidence to follow a subject and keep them in focus. And for this particular trip in Berlin, I tried to just go with it. And sometimes you miss focus in video and you just get it back, and you just have to kind of be aware of where your minimum focus is and where your infinity focus is and what lies in between. And you can start adjusting and getting used to it and really honing in on that to get some decent video footage as well. Even though there are some missed focus points, it doesn't look too bad, especially if you're not. We need to stop being so hard on ourselves. Sometimes we're just out there making photos, taking videos with the sake of just expressing what we feel like doing, showing people a beautiful day that we're experiencing or a beautiful trip, and things don't need to be perfect. You know what I forgot? I'm blabbing away trying to throw words into this video so that you can see these photos and these videos, and I completely forgot that I actually wanted to go through these photos on my computer, just talk you through them and share some of my thoughts on some of these photos. As mentioned, the 35mm focal length is pretty cool for travel because you can take photos of people, you can take photos of scenes, you can take photos of buildings, you can take photos of your environment, and it's quite a versatile focal length, especially if you can find one with a slightly closer minimal focus distance, unlike this one here. But regardless, you can get some. It's a very versatile, as I just said, focal length. As you can tell, I went a little bit crazy with some of my colors, which I do still enjoy doing with my photography. This one I calibrated the blues all the way, not all the way, but somewhat to the left, creating some nice cherry reds and cyanish, greenish cyans or cyanish blues. This denim over here, straight out of camera, no changes. And then this is the direct conversion to black and white. This bunny is through a glass. The sun was pretty much gone, so it was just fluorescent lights outside. And I didn't think this was going to be in focus, but as you can tell, it's perfectly nailed. The density in the colors, for some of these where the colors were really pushed, is fairly decent. I have experienced better density in color lenses before, especially the ones that have the name Leica attached to them. My 12-60 for my GH5. I don't think anything can really match the colors, the density in colors that I get from that lens, but then we are talking a completely different price point, and it's very understandable. During some of our time in Berlin, I also handed the camera over to Julia and to Angela, who didn't have too much of a difficult time with the manual focus. It took them a little bit of time to get used to it and to understand that they can't just snap and get something in focus, but with the focus assist, they did have an okay-ish time, and with that I managed to get some photos of myself from this Berlin trip as well. This is a yummy dinner on Saturday night. Negronis, beautiful summer's day with a gorgeous view of the park at an Italian restaurant. And while we were waiting for our food to arrive, the light was just beautifully hitting Julia. And this photo over here is straight out of camera, no edits, and the direct black and white conversion. And another one. And the final few images are of this abandoned looking warehouse with some beautiful light shining through. I went a little crazy with the colors on this one, and I don't think I'm ashamed of it. It's a fun edit, it was a fun day. A lot of colors. We went to this market before going to the airport. I can't remember what the market was called, but it was pretty cool. It was like in the middle of some desert area, even though it was in the middle of the city. And there was a lot of cool stuff there, but I managed to not buy anything because I'm trying to be a bit more careful, but some really cool old clothing at decent prices. I would love to go back one day when we have a space of our own, when we have more space other than this bedroom and a shared space outside this bedroom. I might go back and indulge in some cool shirts, and there were some really cool things there. But this warehouse was within that vicinity, and Julia was taking some photos of me taking photos, so I took a photo of Julia taking a photo of me, vice versa, back and forth. And yeah, this is the end of the trip. From there we went straight to the airport, got onto our flight, which was over an hour delayed, but it was cool because I was very happy with the photos that I knew that I was going to be editing the next day. It was a great trip. It was a good getaway, beautiful weather, even though in the evenings it was raining, but that was perfect. It made for some calm, peaceful sleep. Ate some yummy food during the day, a lot of walking, visiting Julia's sister, It was a fantastic weekend. I'd love to go back to Berlin again, maybe to check out more markets. I saw one camera shop. I didn't buy anything. I went to one camera shop. I needed help with my Pentacon 6 and they couldn't help me. They said it travels pretty bad and they didn't have any in parts and stuff like that. For those of you that have been following the Pentacon 6 journey, I rate in the next 2 weeks or so I'll have a final conclusion to everything and I'll put together that video. But for those of you that have been here for this particular video, for the photos, thank you for being here. I think we'll leave it at that. I'll throw some voice over any other videos or whatever that I should actually directly be addressing, or I have done that because this is the end of the video. I'm going to say what I usually say when I end videos, which is don't forget to keep taking photos, keep making videos, take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers. If you enjoyed this video, do consider subscribing to my channel. I would appreciate it. And on your screen right now is that video I was telling you about that strange lens. That's the video.